the Trump administration has also made the claim that Russia is very much involved in propping up the Maduro regime. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told my colleague Wolf Blitzer yesterday that there was a plane waiting to take Maduro to Cuba, but the Russians talked him out of it. What exactly is the Russian role here?
Look, the Russians like nothing better than putting a thumb in our eye. They're using the Cubans as surrogates. They'd love to get effective control of a country in this hemisphere. It's not ideological. It's just good old-fashioned power politics. That's why we have the Monroe Doctrine, which we're dusting off in this administration. It's why the president indicated last night that the Cubans better think long and hard about what their role is. We're going to continue to...
What has the president said to Vladimir Putin on this subject?
We've made it clear to the Russians in a lot of conversations at a lot of different levels, some of which are going to continue today, why we think this behavior is unacceptable to us. Those conversations are going to go on, but we're not going to limit ourselves to conversations. We're taking steps. We're putting more pressure on the Maduro regime. The effect of the economic sanctions already imposed are drying up revenues to Maduro. He won't be able to pay the service members. He won't be able to put gas in their Jeeps. This is having a profound effect, and it's a cumulative effect over time.
Has the president specifically spoken to Vladimir Putin about Venezuela?
I don't want to get into the specifics of the president's conversations.
But isn't it important? I do want to ask, though, isn't it important, though? This is such a big issue for you. It's such a big issue for the administration. It's such a big issue for America and South America. If this is a priority, doesn't it matter whether or not the president has addressed it directly?
I think the president's addressing it directly all the time. You read his tweets, I'm quite sure. He talked in a tweet last night about a possible embargo to Cuba. We've made it very clear to the Russians. There's no misunderstanding in Moscow. That I am very clear.
I understand the president does intend to speak to Vladimir Putin today. Is that correct?
Look, I said before, I'm not going to get into the specifics to that. I think Secretary Pompeo will be addressing his counterpart. We've had a lot of conversations with the Russians, that's for sure.
I just, because I'm reading a transcript of an interview you just did on Fox News.
You want to ask me about Russian collusion?
No, I do not at all. Not even a little. No, Ambassador,
you're unbelievable.
You're misrepresenting.
I
absolutely want to. I just want to understand what the president has done because Russia clearly played a role. Mike Pompeo was talking about it yesterday, and you were mentioning the Cuban relationship. I just want to know what diplomatic pressure the president will exert. And I understand you said moments ago there is a call scheduled for today between the president and Vladimir Putin. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said. I said there was a call scheduled between Secretary Pompeo and his counterpart. You can look at your transcript.
Okay. I will go ahead and look at that transcript again. The part I'm looking at right now, it says Ambassador John Bolton told Fox and Friends that President Trump will call Vladimir Putin today following Pompeo's claims that Russia stopped Maduro from leaving Venezuela. But we'll take another look at that. And as you said, that's only one of the issues here. What's the status of Leopoldo Lopez?
That didn't sound like a transcript to me. It sounded like a report.
Okay, this is not. You're missing the overall point here, and I'm not trying to pick a fight on Russia at all.
The one who's missing the point is you.
Okay.
We could have a conversation about Venezuela,
and we are.
And
look, and we are. And if you let me ask the next question, I think one of the most dramatic moments yesterday was seeing Leopoldo Lopez in public in the morning. I found that so surprising and unexpected. He had been released from his house confinement. By the end of the day, he went first to the Chilean embassy and then I think now to the Spanish embassy. What's his status tonight?
Look, the fact is that all of the leaders of the opposition are in danger because of the authoritarian Maduro government, and they have taken steps really over the last 3 months to protect themselves in various ways. Leopoldo Lopez was out of house arrest for the first time in a long time yesterday. And he was understandably concerned about what the Maduro regime might do. So we don't get into discussions about where they are or what they're up to. We'll see what happens today.
I want to play something that Mike Pompeo did say just a short time ago. And this is a question you are asked regularly and has to do with military intervention. You've said that all options remain on the table. Let me just play you the exact language the secretary just used.
The president has been crystal clear and incredibly consistent. Military action is possible. If that's what's required, that's what the United States will do. We'd prefer a peaceful transition of government there where Maduro leaves and a new election is held. But the president has made clear in the event that there comes a moment, and we'll all have to make decisions about when that moment is, and the president will ultimately have to make that decision. He's prepared to do that if that's what's required.
The language the Secretary used is if that is what is required. Broadly speaking, what would require U.S. military action?
Well, first, I agree with everything Mike just said. I think the president has been crystal clear, and it's one element of a successful strategy is that you don't necessarily telegraph to your potential opposition what you're going to do or when you're going to do it. We have said repeatedly as well, as Mike said, we want a peaceful transition of power. The Russians could assist that. The Cubans could assist it by returning to Cuba. We're going to continue to work on that basis, but we're having effectively a special meeting of National Security Council principals later today, and I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot of steps.
Very quickly, two last questions. Do you expect that Maduro will be in power at the end of today?
I don't know how one can predict that. I think, as in the case of many authoritarian regimes, what looks like a pretty imposing structure, sometimes one kick at the door and the whole rotten edifice falls down.
All right, and just in closing, because again, I don't want this to be a piece of contention here. I'm just reading from you the transcript that we were given of the Fox News interview, just so our viewers know and you know what I was asking. Brian Kilmeade said to you, if you want to back off the Russians, you have to call the Russians, as the Secretary of State called his counterpart Lavrov. Has President called Vladimir Putin? If so, what was the call like? Then you apparently said the call is scheduled for today. It's an important call.
That's the call between Pompeo and his counterpart. Okay. The call has not been made, as I understand it.
Great. Again, that was what the confusion was there, Ambassador. I just wanted people to know, because reading the transcript and looking at that exact question and answer, it could leave the impression you were saying the president would speak to Vladimir Putin. I just wanted you to be aware of why I was asking, and our viewers as well. You do not know of a specific call coming up between the two leaders.
That's correct.